back. Yes, it's been. I hope you had as fun of a weekend as I did here in Gardenia. Getting stuff done, making things happen, building stuff. I like, just 5 minutes ago finished the first shower I've had in 5 days after doing field work. Got our new shower system installed last night as it was getting dark and went, yeah, and now it's 34 degrees and dropping, and I'll wait till morning, and then I get up this morning. I'm like, well, I'll do my show prep because it's 24 degrees, but by the time the show starts, according to my weather app, it's going to be 36 degrees here. And so let's see, right now, we're all the way up to 32. Yeah, I was like, all right, I'll wait to that because I have an outdoor shower because I'm an off-grid badass like that. And I just, it's a longer story. If you want to know more about it, check out the Garden of Freedom Instagram page, of course, as always in our promos at Garden of Freedom, at the Garden of Freedom on Instagram. At 420 Pat Rock, I feel better. Let's close. Well, yeah, no, and I have been wearing pretty. This is what happens when there's no woman around out here. I was wearing pretty much the same work clothes for 5 days straight, but I haven't. It's not like working in the summer where you're sweating through them and they get gross with sweat. It's cold out. Like, I've been out doing mostly chainsaw work and landscaping and moving brush piles around and piling up rocks, like heavy work. My hands are beat up. I got to take a day off today because my hands are like tired of, like, the clenching is like, oh. But all that being said, we do have more important things to talk about today. It's Monday. It's a big news day. We've got all the news to catch up on from our 3-day news break over the weekend because we had such an awesome, positive, fun Friday show. And thank you to Matt and Steven, our callers who joined us Friday. They were amazing. Today, I got to tease ahead in less than an hour. None other than Billy Roper is joining us, the white nationalist, that's right, of ShieldWallNetwork.com, describing himself as part of the Balk right. And that's not, we're balking at everything because we're so witty and fringy. No, it's balkanization. Yes, and you would think, well, hey, that sounds a lot like localization, and it sure does, right? When I don't mean verbally sounds like, I mean, it's like the idea of breaking countries up into smaller parts, into like the Balkans, the balkanization being the term to describe this process. Now, we couldn't come up with something better, like, independence en masse, or no, like just, but yeah, balkanization, the breakup of America is what this guy's advocating for. Now, you've heard me say, in terms of the presidential platform of dissolving the federal government, that, you can be as crazy on the left, crazy on the right as you want, have your separate communities, and everybody should be respectful of that. And I've even said, if you're a white nationalist, I want you to have that right, to have that, to be wrong. You have the right to be wrong, and you have the right to be left alone being wrong, as long as you're not hurting anybody else. You have a right to be disgusting, as long as you're not forcing your disgusting whatever on anybody else. And I mean, if balkanization, I mean, if I hate to, like, I don't mean, please don't misunderstand me here. I do not mean to say let's concede anything to white nationalists. But if we cannot convince them to not be white nationalists, can we convince them to go away and be alone and leave everybody else alone? Because that would be awesome, right? Can we just make white nationalists kind of irrelevant? Let them have their failures, social experiments, and who knows what happens. But today, for the comment producer, or the comment contest to win membership in the Adam versus the Man Producers Club, then the best comment that is a question or a challenge for our friend, the white nationalist Billy Roper, we'll see. I mean, there's sort of like, being half Jewish myself, by ethnic heritage. I mean, I can't really ask questions like, well, so what do you think of this Jew? But I know we can get wild in the comments, so get them in now. We got, like I said, we got a big news block to catch up on. We got a COVID block. We got a grab bag. We got, man, it's a lot of fun stuff. Today is going to be an awesome show. Let's go ahead and get Comment Jim Freedom up here, and Comment Jim Freedom, of course, connecting us with the audience, making sure that when you guys comment on the show, at least somebody sees it. If it's good, he puts it on the screen. Today, best challenge, comment, or question for our white nationalist guest of Balk the Right, the Balk Right, excuse me. I want to say Balk the Right, like rock the right, like Balk the Vote.
Oh God.
Like fuck the vote, yeah, balk the vote. Just, but here I mean it as balk, not balkanization. Obviously, too much wordplay. I haven't smoked enough weed. Jim, if someone comes up with the best comment or question for our friend Billy Roper today, what would they win?
They would win access into our producers club. Before I start doing these promos, I'd like to point out that our good friend Hiram Bifidum, you know that name, $6.13 on the super chat. He wants to say, Adam, take your hands and see if you can run them under a shower head as hot as you can. Carefully take it. Make sure your elastomer lubricant is good.
Oh, interesting. No, I wonder if that's is that just like well, thank you very much, Herman, and thank you for all your regular super chats. It's a great way to support the show. And as always, if you can beat Hiram's super chat, top of the day, you can buy your way in one time without having to go to Patreon into the producers club. But I want is that like a therapy, like soaking if your hands have experienced like manual labor work, and it's not just manual, like there's different kinds of manual labor hand trauma, right? Like, there's just work, like you're slamming on tools, you're gripping hard, you're impacting, but no real trauma, just work, right? And then there's the abrasion and the overwork and things that cause like blisters and strains and tweaks in your joints and things like that. But what I've been doing is like the impact trauma of trimming trees and working on a chainsaw. And sometimes that impact trauma is when this is from like 2 weeks ago. I'm still going to show this off. When the chainsaw hits your finger. So now this one, hey, you know what? This injury here, this is a Luke Wenke story. Luke Wenke was here with his white Chevy Equinox that he drives as the top Lyft Uber in upstate New York, as he is famous for there. And he's actually using it now. He's done a great job, I gotta say. It was really cool with Luke here last week for a couple days visiting, and he got some chainsaw time while on mushrooms. That's a typical thing when you visit here, if you're confident. He came out here and he had one of his trim panels was falling off his car, and I was helping him put it back on. It was like the lower it's got this plastic trim panel along the bottom of the door, and he had knocked it off, and he had it, and I was helping him put it back on. It was totally my fault, but he closed my finger in the door, sort of. Because I was holding this piece of plastic up, and I was like, now open it, now close it, now open it, and I moved my finger, and I was like, all right, now close it, and wait, open it. But yeah, that was kind of scary. And then, I mean, my hands tell dumb fucking story, a lot of dumb stories right now. I cut myself with the chainsaw. I told someone to slam my finger in the car door. And then this is still from like 2 weeks ago when I picked up one of the cats funny and it actually bit through and I got like that full cat bite infection. And the crazy thing about that is it's been in my joint in this finger. Like, I don't think it's still tell if it's a little thicker or if it's just got those scuffs. Yeah, it's a little bit swollen still. But it's got this like red halo. They're almost healed up, but like I got pockets of pus underneath for a while. It was gross. And then but it's hitting branches and scraping shit up on trees and moving stuff around. I need better gloves. God damn it. I love using those cheap nitrile coated gloves because they're practically disposable. Like I'll buy. I mean, the main reason is the cost. It's like I guess it's because I'm cheap. But no, like I'll buy or I used to buy, at $20, um, like nice leather gloves at the hardware store, or some kind of synthetic, but it's about $20 a pair of gloves. And what I found was out here rolling rocks around, the kind of work I'm doing, even just moving rocks occasionally, as I do here, I would go through them, in a couple weeks and have to buy a new pair. I mean, I have like a dozen pairs of gloves sitting around with like just rips like along the side of one of the fingers for moving rocks. Or the finger pads are all just worn out at the finger pads. You're like, what's the point? Because the plastic, that nitrile coating is actually really fucking rugged. The thing is, they're flimsy, and the fabric on the back, like I'll hit up the rest of my hands working with them, and they're not really chainsaw proof.
Yeah.
but like, and I'll go through those like a little bit faster than a $20 pair of gloves. But if I have one of those and they last a week and they cost me 50 cents a pair, right?
And you just go through them.
Yeah, I go through, I get a pair of gloves every week instead of every 2 weeks, but it costs me $1 instead of $20. No shit. But it's not.
I wonder how effective it would be to get some that fit your hand and then another batch that's a size higher so you can double glove.
I think you could just double them up. They're stretchy, they're kind of like one size fits all. The nitrile gloves. I mean, they come in different sizes, but I don't know if someone wants to recommend like a legit working glove that is not going to wear out faster than that. I don't. Even if it's like a mid-priced glove that wears out but not as fast, like whatever. New comment contest for the day. Find Adam a new pair of favorite gloves. I love the cheap nitrile gloves. Like that's my jam. Like they're what, 50 cents a dollar a pair, depending on how you buy them. Throw a pair in your pocket, throw them in your glove box, throw them, your toolbox. You got them everywhere. You've always got a handy. Because as much as I beat up my hands, they don't get very dirty. I don't touch stuff outside. Yes, those ones, Jim. Those I did. No, those are ones I gave you. Those are the neon ones. I love those. I love that color of. Yeah, they come in that neon green too. The ones I'm using now are black and yellow though.
Nice.
All right. All right. Tell everybody about the Producers Club and other ways to support the show. Well, I hit this bong and get ready for our big news block.
Okay, for sure. So if you want to be cool, like here in Bifidum and all the other members of the Producers Club, you can participate in the contest that Adam mentioned today. If you don't feel like waiting on winning a contest, or you don't want to try, you don't think you're good enough, you can just buy your way in. Do it the lazy way. Just go straight to the adamversustheman.com website and click on the Patreon link. You'll see all the different levels of how you can support the show: $1, $5, $10, or $50 a month. $10 a month is where it's at. That gets you access into the Producers Club that we mentioned. So you can just buy your way in, $10 a month, and it's a really cool backstage for the show. So you can interact and be a part of the show. So that's very awesome. After you do that, go back to adamversustheman.com and check out the store that CJ's put together there. Really a bunch of cool items, and all Producers Club members and better patrons get 15% off and free shipping off of every single order. There's a load more button at the bottom you don't want to miss, so you can see all of the stuff we have, not just the first page they show you, because we've got a lot of really cool items. CJ's put in a lot of work on that, so that's very cool. After that, go back to the website that has everything, adamversustheman.com. Right next to the Patreon button, there's a Cigar Federation. That's our affiliate program, and you can go there and check out all their exotically flavored cigars, and you can even check out some CBD infused cigars that they have that are pretty awesome, called the JSK Nugs. Anything you order on that website, you can use promo code Adam10, like it shows on the screen here. You'll get 10% off your entire order, so definitely check that out and take advantage. Lastly, go to Instagram and check out at the Garden of Freedom. That's where you'll be able to check out all the cool new pictures and keep up with what's going on with Adam personally up there in Gardenia on his homestead. So I'm sure there's pictures of the outdoor shower he was just talking about, things like that. The stuff he talks about, you can go on there, scroll through the whole page. You'll be able to see, you'll be able to pretty much feel like you're there. you'll know what it's like. So when you ever do visit in the future, you'll have a photographic imprint mind of the whole place. You'll know where you're at already. He'll be like,
Jim,
go ahead.
all right, Jim. Well, speaking of which, I was thinking about actually finishing my response to Hiram Bibidum's comment there, where it's like I guess it kind of makes that anytime you've been working your hands a lot, that soaking them is just going to make them feel better, increase the blood flow when they're and just general tissue recovery, healing, everything.
Epsom
And
salt.
I don't know if that makes it. What does Epsom salt actually do other than like feel good on your skin in a bath?
I don't know. I just hear people say it has therapeutic and health benefits. I don't know if it's a bullcrap thing or if it's real. I don't know. People say
but it's in your head.
Thought I'd throw it out there. Yeah.
Yeah, no.
What can it hurt?
I should know the answer to this. Like, what are Epsom salts? Those are bath salts, right? Those are the ones you smoke and then eat people's faces off, like Florida Man.
I don't know about that. I don't know about that. If that's correct, then I take back my statement.
But I was thinking like, yeah, like I was just in the shower for like my first hot like. And by the way, we've had that old, sort of semi-functional shower out here for a while. So now we have a brand new one, and it's awesome. Like it's got a digital thermometer built that tells you how hot the water going out is. Like the other one had two knobs, right? This one is pretty well. It still has two knobs, but it's also got it's a Camp Lux, but it's the nice big one that's going to go in the cabin eventually as like the house hot water heater there. But right now we're using it as intended as the basic shower heater here in the outdoor shower. But yeah, I was just thinking, man, no, I need a real soak. Like I need a bathtub or a hot tub. Thinking, I don't know, if someone want to sponsor a Gardenia hot tub party, all you gotta do is buy us a hot tub. But yeah, I'm really excited about the deck project on the cabin coming along here. I am gonna need you up here this weekend, man. Come on, I'm gonna need you to stand up some big logs for the vertical posts on this thing. It's gonna be fun. Anyways, shall we jump into it? Oh wait, CJ, one other. Yes.
Well, I was just gonna say a follow up. Crystal Ulrich says Epsom salt is high in magnesium, so that'd be where the health benefits are, because magnesium is
and magnesium will let you turn your body into a battery more easily. I get it. Magnesium is an essential supplement. I actually take calcium, magnesium, zinc. I think is what I'm doing right now. Is for those. It's a separate pill, but I don't know what magnesium does.
Rob B says castor oil for your hands and joints.
Oil on your hands and joints. What's castor? Do I feel? My head's been in the news. I don't feel like I'm asking all these basic dumb chemistry questions, but. Yeah, two more administrative notes before we jump into the news real quick. Let's get CJ up here talking about the store at AdamVersusTheMan.com. How, given the incredible variety of merchandise you've already got on there, is our buttons like little like the freedom buttons that we give away on tour? These guys. This is just an inch standard button. It's got the freedom logos, it's freedomline.com, and then basic metal backing with like a safety pin kind of mechanism built into it. CJ, can we get these on the store? Can we make these?
I can look and find if they've got buttons. I'm sure there's buttons on WooCommerce. So yeah.
Now you might think it's kind of a silly thing to interrupt the show for, but I'm doing it for a very specific reason here, because I wanted to get, and this is, can you go ahead and play our COVID intro? No, I'm just kidding. Don't do it. This is not medical advice, and we could do this completely, sidestepping this language challenge. But on Amazon.com, I ordered a button. It's got a picture of a mask on it, and it says medically exempt. And it wasn't from someone who's got like Prime shipping with it. It's one of those like completely third-party vendors that just lists on Amazon. And it might be because of the nature of it being something that challenges the official story about COVID. But I ordered this thing like 2 weeks ago and I still don't have it yet. And it's been delayed for like the third or fourth time. I'm starting to think it's not coming.
It's a scam.
We might just have to start making our own mask medically exempt buttons at the AdamVersusTheMan.com store.
Well, I mean, you want to get one of them big buttons, though, so that way nobody has to come within 6 feet of you to read it and go, what does that say?
No, you just point to, it's a point. You don't have to engage with people when, ideally, because, Jim and I have walked around a lot without masks together. And in Arizona, 90+% of the time, not even a thing. The other 10%, there's some interaction where if you just went, no, I got button. See, it'd be, okay. And they back off, or at least, kind of, it's a little more respectful than, well, this guy's just being a punk trying to not wear a mask. And in order to avoid potential censorship and other challenges related to talking about this, I am going to accept my own policy here and assume that if you are buying a medically exempt mask button from our store, that you are medically exempt, and I'm not supposed to ask to respect your privacy for legal reasons, but also, or that you're buying for someone else. But this is within the laws themselves. As far as I know, every single mask mandate in America and 90+% in the rest of the world include medical exemptions, which means that they have to admit that the threat of this virus is not so bad as to be bigger than all the other health challenges that humans experience on a regular basis. They haven't been able to say that COVID is worse than cancer, for example, for humanity. And so if you're dying of cancer and putting a mask on makes it worse, they have to say, okay, you don't have to wear a mask. Or even on a smaller scale, if wearing a mask increases your anxiety and you have an anxiety disorder, they allow you to decide by the law whether wearing a mask is good or not. And if it's medically detrimental in any way to your health, you get to say, I'm medically exempt. I don't have to wear a mask. Now, certain businesses can say, well, we will not let you in, but we cannot discriminate against you, so we will accommodate you by curbside service or something else, and you have to accept that if you're going to accept the premise of this. But I think wearing a button like that is a really nice way to sidestep a lot of these confrontations and to just assert your right and to point out that the law is silly and that the law, this is the reality of the law, and that this is also the reality of all of the medical advice from the World Health Organization and local health authorities, right? Which is follow the law, follow the mandates. And I think it's an important positive thing to assert. So just like not wearing a mask in general, but even more specifically, it's not, I don't have a mask on right now. I might have forgot it, might have left it in the car. It's no, I have made the medical choice that for my medical, my health, I am not going to wear a mask. And I don't know. So the reason I got you on screen for this, CJ, is to make sure it's possible and see if the audience would buy them. And if so, I'll make my own little version of the graphic of the button that I'm still waiting for to arrive in the mail.
Right. We could put it on a T-shirt, a sweatshirt, a coffee mug, pair of underwear. It's
got to be a button or a name badge. Something that you don't have to wash, you can wear every day. That's the point.
Yeah, and something that you don't want to. I don't like. It's only for you can take the button off when you're done shopping at a place.
We can make multiple.
You don't want to wear it, walk around.
Here's what
you can wear it all the time, but that's the thing is you could put it on your your shirt or your jacket where it's visible every day, or put it on a hat.
Right.
Right. What if I don't want to wear a button though? I'm just trying to get to that market where You don't have
let's
to wear
ask
them.
the audience. Let's ask the audience.
Wait, what if we had a hat like this that says medically exempt like that?
Now, now a hat, something you can wear. I mean, yeah, you got to wash a hat occasionally, but most people don't. And yeah, it's something you can wear every day. Absolutely a hat. But let's ask the audience, what would you pay for, a mask, medically exempt button or a hat, or what other items would you want to see?
I would do like a mask on one side and then have the words medically exempt in red and white on a black hat.
Yeah, we'll take design suggestions too. I was thinking simple black and white, because you actually want it to be readable and very clear from a distance one way or another.
Right.
But yeah, all right.
I got this. So, but yeah, we'll come out with something. We'll come out with a line of medically exempt apparel for people.
And then if you forget, email me. CJ, get it on the screen here. You amazing executive producer, you, Adam at thefreedomline.com. If you have thoughts on this or any other feedback or requests to come out here to visit us in Gardenia, that's the email right there. All right, so Jim, I got one other update, like I said, before we jump into this blog. And I put the story in here as our top story as a reminder to me today. Because I hate to say this, because we have a couple volunteers coming on who want to talk to me after the show today, and I actually have to go and come back because, and I'll be available for the rest of the day. But I'm not doing any field work. It's cold and my hands hurt, and I'm old. Screw it. No. It's cold and it's windy. It's just kind of nasty out, and I need to be available behind my laptop today. Unfortunately, I don't get to go play outside like I did all weekend. But I put this. What does CJ have to say?
Sorry, I was just thinking about somebody in our audience who is pro mask, likes masks, but I was gonna get you on the record on this one. What do you think about like a "This is not" with the Freedom logo over a mask, and we would sell for those that choose masks, but the only one available would be is "This is not freedom." What if you have an audience member who's like, I want a mask?
Yeah, but there's. Well, if people in the audience want a mask and are just looking for someone to custom print a clever design that doesn't contradict our message, and they'll buy it from us, send us your idea. We'll make it. We'll throw it on the store.
This is not freedom over the
right. But my hesitancy here is I don't want to that it's sort of limited in its. I don't want to attack people's freedom to wear a mask. You know what I mean? I don't want to. I want people to feel free to not wear them, but I don't want to use their tactics of peer pressure and bullying, against people who feel that wearing a mask is somehow in their best interest. I know that's a weird line to try to walk. I just kind of want to be aware of that. Like I don't want to say that. And then that's one of the tricky things too about how this has become sort of instituted in the paradigm. We can't fight it with the same tactics they use to get it here.
You know how many times you would hear it's not about freedom, it's about safety.
Right.
You would hear that all day long with that mask.
Right. On. But then again, on your mask, it would say, "This is not freedom." So it's got that. Right. It's got that.
As you were saying it, I was picturing like some people that could use it are people that are forced to wear masks, like people that I wonder if somebody could get away with wearing it at work. You know what I mean?
Yes, when it's that circumstance to say, or not by my choice, like something that's that I really support.
Against my will, yeah.
Yeah, but, right. I do not consent.
Yeah, that kind of messaging I'm 100% behind, because it focuses the criticism on the mandate element. All right, so this afternoon we have one other personal bit of news here, and I put this first story in the pile here from AP. Doctor appears in court video call while performing surgery. Fun sign of the times. And it's a plastic surgeon who appeared in a video conference for a traffic violation in the operating room. And you can hear the medical machinery beeping in the background. And the clerk says, hello, Mr. Green, are you available for trial? He says, it kind of looks like you're in an operating room right now. I am, sir. Yes, I'm in an operating room right now. Yes, I'm available for trial. Go right ahead. Um, yeah. The clerk reminded Green the proceedings were being live streamed because traffic trials are required by law to be open to the public, and Green said he understood. He appeared to continue working with his head down while waiting for Court Commissioner Gary Link to enter the chamber. When Link appeared and saw the doctor on the screen, the judge said he hesitated to proceed with the trial out of concern for the welfare of the patient. I have another surgeon right here who's doing the surgery with me, so I can stand here and allow them to do the surgery also. And the judge decided to postpone. And yeah, and said it happens. I don't know. It's not worth getting into the clip here, but you can see what's actually happening here. And this is just kind of a fun quirk sign of the times, man. I kind of wish like everybody could do this. Oh, you want me to stop my day of doing important things that people want me to do because it creates value, and get dressed up and drive to the courtroom and be there at 8 a.m. to go through your security checkpoint, to sit in the back of the room while you drag every other schmuck in front of me in line through this process, and then have me, kiss the ring and say, yes, I was speeding, Your Honor. What the fuck? Let's get on with this. No, I'm sorry. We got more important shit to do. And that's kind of why I like this story. Like for a doctor to just, there are a lot of reasons it's not like the perfect example of this, but it's a pretty powerful one of really, fuck you, government. We got better shit to do. And it underscores like the time cost of all the administrative bullshit that people are dragged through. When it's a doctor who could be performing surgery otherwise, it's a little more intense of an example. And in this case, didn't even get that. I bet there's some other backstory to this too. Like, he probably asked for a deferral or tried to have it put off, and it was like, hey, I'm going to be in surgery if you don't. And then, well, you didn't put it off. I'll be here. Video, fuck you. Let's do this. But today, the reason this is related to personal news, I'm very excited about this. Um, Today is an important day for my legal case, New Orleans, with the Shall ID, starting with the pressure washer incident from January 2 years ago, 2019, when we were promoting the New Orleans book bomb and water stenciling, that is holding up plastic stencils and pressure washing. I'm trying to do this like on screen. Can't. Is there a way to pantomime pressure washing over a stencil? I don't know. Weird hand motions. But I got arrested for not showing ID, and it was a deliberate but unplanned act of civil disobedience that apparently might have put me in the position to be the guy who takes down the equivalent of stop and frisk in the South. And that's what it is, Shall ID. So today is the oral argument between my attorney and the attorneys for the government, and this guy, Kearney Laughlin, my attorney, who just stepped up after the incident happened 2 years ago, has been amazing, just shepherding this thing through the 2-year process to get to this point. So if someone in the Producers Club could grab it, I posted the link there earlier, but we're going to actually end the show on time. We're probably not going to get through all the headlines. We'll get through the important big ones in our interview in the COVID block. But at 1 o'clock Central Time, which would be 11 o'clock, 11 a.m. Pacific, when this show ends, they will be starting the oral argument live stream, audio only. So I don't recommend you listen to it, at this point, or try to listen. I'm going to listen live because it's important to me to know, as it's happening, and to support my attorney in this. If it was practical, I would have been there in person for this, but I don't know what they're even allowing in New Orleans courts right now. So at noon, noon Arizona, 11 Pacific, 1 Central when it starts in New Orleans time. We'll pull it up. We'll put up on the screen here. So CJ, Jim, don't let me go overtime and what we'll probably do is listen to, the first few minutes. If it's not working, if they're late or whatever, I'll just sign off and say I'll give you all an update tomorrow. Maybe we'll listen to a little sample of it together, something like that. Sound good?
Yeah, sounds good.
All right. Well, then, into the headlines we go. First, from Reuters, news.trust.org, exclusive: U.S. carries out airstrike against Iranian-backed militia targets in Syria. And this is the story we mentioned on Friday that we would be getting to Monday. But we have a whole block of international violent bullshit to cover today. But this is an important one to catch up on, of course, as the Biden administration is right back to serving the war machine. Less than a month into office, they ordered their first strikes, and now we see significant escalation. The United States on Thursday carried out an airstrike in Syria against a structure belonging to what it said were Iran-backed militia, two officials told Reuters, in an apparent response to rocket attacks against U.S. targets in Iraq. While the strike could be the first retaliatory moves by the United States following last week's attacks, the move appeared to be limited in scope, potentially lowering the risk of escalation. Also, a decision to strike only in Syria and not in Iraq would give the Iraqi government some breathing room as it carries out its own investigation of a February 15 attack that wounded Americans and killed one U.S. service member, as you can see from that graphic on screen. But enough about that. CJ, I want to put this in perspective before we go into any of these other stories even. And again, this is where I think that the longer term perspective that we're able to bring you with this show is very, very valuable to understanding exactly what's going on with current events. Because if you see this in a, by itself, isolated, these stories of escalating violence in the Middle East, you might be thinking, oh, wow, World War III is coming. Oh, look at what they're going towards. They did this before. But you know what? That's not the case. And if you consider, keep in mind the de-escalation of war over time and the greater difficulty in conducting war, the more connected the world gets, right? So, how long have they been trying to get war with Iran going? How many decades? And not able to. I mean, they're very powerful people who are trying to make war with Iran and the U.S. happen. Like that's how they want World War III to jump off, right? And they haven't been able to because I think the information age, the connectedness of the world presents a huge check on their ability to do that. You can't go to the average American and say, hey, man, you heard of this country, Iran? Well, they're crazy and they're religious fundamentalists and they want you all dead. You personally, they want you dead. So you better vote for war with Iran, or you hate freedom and you hate America and your family's going to die. And they go, well, hold on, let me fact check that, sir. You just get on the internet real quick. Hold on, I can Skype, new random friends from Iran anytime I want. What? Yeah, you can't lie to people the way that you used to be able to, that made it possible to get millions of gullible young men to dress up in silly costumes and meet in the middle of the field where none of them live to kill each other for wearing different colors. That just doesn't exist in the age of the internet. And the global war on terror represents the evolution of the war racket, possibly this whole plandemic, if you want to call it that. I wouldn't, because I wouldn't want to get censored. But it is like, if this is the focus of the government racket, hey, at least the body count is not as bad as with outright war. But the escalation that we're seeing in Syria right now, the reason I don't get too down these rabbit holes is that I know what they are. Is it's like they're poking and prodding and going, can we escalate this? Can we escalate this? Can we escalate this? And if the people of the world go, no, you can't, then it really doesn't matter what new petty excuse they came up with. So while there's tragedy, there's empire, there's exploitation, there is certainly an enrichment of the military-industrial complex, and what we are experiencing here, I think, as a species, is the death throes of the war racket. And that kind of makes it an exciting time to be alive. But yes, people do get hurt in the meantime. Also from Friday, AP headline, explosion strikes Israeli-owned ship in Mideast amid tension. Dubai, United Arab Emirates, an explosion struck an Israeli-owned cargo ship sailing out of the Middle East on Friday. An unexplained blast renewing concerns about ship security amid escalating tensions between the U.S. and Iran. The crew and vessel were safe, according to the UK Maritime Trade Operations, which is run by the British Navy. The explosion forced the vessel to head to the nearest port. Now, with Israel, there have been a lot of false flags. I mean, you look at the story of the USS Liberty, and when you have a highly militarized state like Israel or the United States, then there will always be victims where people are less visible. And that's one of the things that to me is really important about seeing the world as this global human family. Let's get everybody on the internet, let's get everybody plugged in, let's get everybody accountable. Like, and I'm certainly not willing to turn a blind eye to the evils of social media, but visibility equals safety. There's so many positive things about social media that we kind of take for granted, especially in the first world. And that's what's the problem with militarism today? It's people like us, privileged citizens of the empire, are visible and safe and protected, and there are still billions of people in the world as potential victims who can die in anonymity. We won't even know this. Another one from Reuters. Syria says Israel attacks area around southern Damascus. The Syrian army said on Sunday evening that Israeli-fired rockets struck parts of southern Damascus, and escalating attacks at regional intelligence sources say target Iran-linked assets. A Syrian army statement said the attack came from the Golan Heights and that it had downed most of the missiles in the second such strike in less than a month on the outskirts of the capital. An Israeli military spokesman declined to comment on the report. Yes, and this one was from Sunday, February 28th. Now, another couple of international news stories worth catching up on. The Jerusalem Post, ironically, J-Post, has this jailed Putin critic Navalny moved probably to prison camp, according to a lawyer. He is due to spend a little over 2.5 years behind bars, according to his lawyers, one of whom, Vadim Kobzev, said on Twitter he had been moved from his Moscow jail. Jailed Russian opposition politician Alexei Navalny has been moved to an undisclosed detention center outside Moscow that may be a prison camp. His lawyer and a member of a rights organization said on Thursday. Navalny, a prominent critic of President Vladimir Putin, was jailed this month over alleged parole violations related to an embezzlement case he said was trumped up for political reasons, something the authorities deny. He is due to spend a little over 2.5 years behind bars, according to his lawyers, one of whom... Anyway, this is... I'm wondering, like, what... there's something I don't understand about the Alexei Navalny story. As much as I am an admirer and and a supporter of everything he stands for, it just seems like they've either he's going to die in prison, or he's not even going to be there 2.5 years before the truth comes out, and Putin ends up having to step down or relinquish power because of it. Putin is a thug of a statist tyrant, and this is the man who is taking him on. And is there some element of controlled opposition or other manipulation? Of course, there's some other major behind-the-scenes story that would fundamentally alter our understanding of what's going on here. But this is the truth that challenges the lies of Putin right now. Speaking of lies, we go now. I mean, some of these stories, I look at some of these international stories, and it's like, oh, yes, there are bombings and escalations in the Middle East. And yes, in Russia, dissent is being suppressed. And in Asia, they're having protests. And this is, yeah, but this is actually, it seems like progress. I mean, all this international news today feel like it. I hate to say, because facts don't care about your feels, right? But no, it feels like we're like progress. CNN.com, Hong Kong protesters come out as 47 pro-democracy figures appear in court. Hundreds of protesters risked arrest to demonstrate outside a Hong Kong court where 47 pro-democracy activists appeared Monday, charged with subversion under the national security laws. Authorities step up their crackdown against opposition voices. The protest was the largest seen in the city for months, with those gathered chanting the banned slogan, "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our time," and carrying placards demanding the release of those rounded up under the sweeping legislation. Like, wait, there's a slogan that's banned? Like, you're not allowed to say "Liberate Hong Kong, revolution of our time"? I want to put that on a button for Americans. Let's live up to the example that the Hong Kong revolutionaries are setting for us. Prosecutors had argued in court that the defendants were involved in a massive and well-organized scheme to subvert the Hong Kong government by organizing and participating in an unofficial primary election last July. Such contests are a normal function in democracies around the world, during which political parties select the strongest candidates for an election. And China, the communist Chinese party, or the Chinese party of Communist Party of China, whatever, CCP, Chinese Communist Party, is truly tyrannical and oppressive. And Hong Kong, by standing up the way that they are there, are revealing something so much deeper about this government that claims authority, that effectively violently exercises authority over a large fraction of the world's citizens. And it could be that Hong Kong is the thread to the sweater of Chinese communism. I can only hope. But if there was anything else that I saw that we could do to help, I would. I mean, this is like, there are very few times I'm like, that's where I want to go. Like, I want to, like, this, but what? And it might not be right now. Obviously, it's not. These court hearings. I mean, I don't know. This is one of those things. Part of what makes it exciting is you never know what the breaking point might be. You don't know if the protest outside of the courthouse for this particular hearing is the one that is the critical domino to fall, that 2 or 3 years from now we can say, and that was the beginning of the end for the Communist Party of China. It's possible. Very exciting story to follow. Also from Reuters, how many dead bodies? Asked Myanmar protester killed on bloodiest day. Yeah, did you know this was happening? I didn't. Of course, this is yesterday. The day before he was killed, internet network engineer Ni Ong Kitet Nang had posted on Facebook about the increasingly violent military crackdown on pro-democracy protests in Myanmar. Hashtag how many dead bodies UN need to take action, he wrote, in reference to the United Nations. He was among the first shot dead in Myanmar's biggest city of Yangon on Sunday, the bloodiest day since the February 1 coup prompted daily protests against the junta and demand the release of elected leader Aung San Suu Kyi. The UN Human Rights Office said at least 18 people had been killed and 30 wounded on Sunday, bringing the total number of protesters killed since the coup to at least 21. The army says 1 policeman has died in the unrest. Authorities did not respond to requests for comment on Sunday's violence. The state-run Global New Light of Myanmar said the army had previously shown restraint, but could not ignore anarchic mobs that believed in no rulers. Yes, it said severe action will be inevitably taken against riotous protesters. Yeah, and if you look at the video, it is serious chaos in the streets. But as the article goes on, with daily protests and strikes paralyzing a country where the army had promised to bring order, soldiers and police intensified their crackdown at the weekend. Ni Young Hetetnang was shot a few hundred meters from Ledan Junction, a regular protest gathering point. Video from an apartment above records the sound of gunshots as Nini lies slumped outside the gate of the Kamaria Township High School, dressed in a check shirt and with a builder's white hard hat, his phone in his hand. Yeah. So it's not all glorious, easy progress, but in some cases, the big progress happens without anything in the streets. In France, this headline, not that I'm any kind of Sarkozy expert, came as a surprise to me, but the AP has this: Francis Sarkozy, convicted of corruption, sentenced to jail. Yeah, like actual jail. A Paris court on Monday found French former President Nicolas Sarkozy guilty of corruption and influence peddling and sentenced him to 1 year in prison and a 2-year suspended sentence. The 66-year-old politician was president from 2007 to 2012, was convicted for having tried to illegally obtain information from a senior magistrate in 2014 about a legal action in which he was involved. So, yeah, first time in France's modern history a former president has been convicted of corruption. And so this isn't I mean, there's a couple ways of looking at this, right? It's not, oh, look, yeah, the government's coming down. It was, he was the drug lords had paid off the president. He was working for the mafia. No, they got that all, laundered through corporate entities at this point. But what does, is it the system trying to maintain its own credibility? Is it something specific with Sarkozy? Obviously, this is one of those things where there's going to be a much bigger backstory than what we see. But if in order for government to maintain its credibility, they have to damage the, sanctity of the ruling class, good sign in instability. All right, we're going to get to our guest in just a couple minutes here. Very excited. But first, let's check in with Comment Jim Freedom. That's our international news block for the day. After our guest, we're going to come back with our Corona block, including American diplomats in China complaining they were forced to take anal swab coronavirus tests. Yes. Well, let's get Comment Jim Freedom up on screen here for a minute. Check back in with the audience and see if we have any questions for our guest, Mr. Roper.
What up? No, we don't have any questions as of yet. Hopefully those will come in when he gets on video. They kind of been having their own little debate in there. Every once in a while, a couple questions come through, like they're even talking about the housing market. They're talking about how ridiculous it is that people pay, take 30 years to buy a house, and that takes 3 months to build. Let's see. The 420 Pat Rock wanted to know if those cops were yelling "hut hut 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 hut." I didn't hear the audio. What happened?
It's a South Park reference, isn't it? Where they're always hup, 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 hup. Like any troops or cops walking together.
That could be. I would have missed that. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not a South Parker, but Mr. Gaylord says, "What happened to Kokesh 2020? He's sad. I guess he just found out that he also would like to see you when you're going to be back on the streets." I'd wait till it gets a little bit warmer. You know what I mean? I'd go out there right now. So what do you think?
This would be a nice time to be in Vegas. What's the weather in Vegas like? It's got to be nicer than here.
Yeah, it's probably not bad. Yeah, I suppose. I don't know what the temperature is, but I'm trying to find there was some other questions in here, but there's so many. There's a lot of people here, I guess I can point out, from the Shield Wall Network, which is the group that is our guest, right? So he has
Yes,
some
yes.
followers that followed him over here to watch. So that's cool. We appreciate the
Excellent. Yeah.
view time.
No, that's wonderful. And we welcome you to the audience, to the conversation, and Billy will be on screen here in momentarily. As soon as Jim says we're ready.
Just one thing. This actually ties right into the conversation you guys are probably right about to have. And somebody asked a great question, and just give me 2 seconds to find this one because it's like right here. And I know it's still here. It's a question for their group. I can't find it. Anyways, they basically just said, because they asked them, "Are you Christian?" And they said, "Yes." Somebody from the Shield Wall Network, and then they said, "Well, Jesus wasn't white, so now what?" And then somebody else said, or the person said Jesus was white. So I guess that's the debate. They believe Jesus was white.
Wait. I thought Jesus was Jewish.
Yeah, and they don't like Israel right now. They don't like Israel. They're convinced that Israel is running America. So
All right. Well, this is going to be interesting. Keep your questions and comments for our guest coming. The best one to put him on the spot, I suppose, wins membership today in the Producers Club. So I hope we get some good ones during this interview. Jim will be keeping up on it, and CJ getting them on screen. So without further ado, let's get Billy up here, ladies and gentlemen. Billy Roper is an author, both fiction and nonfiction. And I think most people who know him from his public persona wouldn't know that he's a former high school and junior high school history, civics, economics, and geography teacher. Been a candidate for public office, lifelong political activist, leader, spokesman, according to his website, shieldwallnetwork.com. He has a bachelor's in history, political science, and a master of liberal arts degree in history with a specialty in anthropology. And I gotta say, those are not easy accomplishments or boxes to check while also checking the white nationalist box. But I from the person who set this up, you hate Jews. And you probably know by now that I'm half German, half Jewish, so genetically programmed to hate myself. But I've always found that conversations with people who you have passionate disagreements with can be the most interesting, and I don't doubt that this will be any different. So, Mr. Roper, if you would please tell us first, what else should people know about your background here?
Well, first, Adam, I appreciate you having me on the program. It's an honor. I am very much in respect of your activism in defense of the Second Amendment against gun control. I agree with you on a lot of issues. For example, I agree with you about the mask silliness and COVID. I agree with you about the foreign wars that you've bravely stood against. I've been aware of your activism for some time, and I want to commend you for it as well. So we have a lot of common ground
so
issues that we actually agree on.
Billy, no, that's beautiful. There's something that occurs to me right away that kind of gets to the heart of this, is that all of those things and there's something even more powerful that we agree on. That's the bigger challenge now in the kind of white nationalism that you represent, with balkanization as the bulk right, decentralization, localization. But what's really hard for me here is that all of those things, I mean, why am I anti-war? Why am I I'm not pro-gun so much as I am pro-self-defense rights, pro property rights, more even fundamentally than that. Why do I want to stand up to the authority and the injustice today? It's because I see humanity as a global human family. It's because of my love for humanity itself, for life itself. And that's what seems, and it's disturbing. How can someone with such a divergent view of humanity, based in any kind of racial disdain, come to such similar conclusions as me on those, and yet on this count be so radically divergent?
It's a great point. I think that considering the multiracial totalitarianism that we're forced to live under today, forced by the federal government, it's natural for people to rebel against that, and libertarianism relative to that multiracial tyranny is a very attractive option. But I feel I'm, actually a former libertarian myself. I was a follower of the rational anarchist school when I was in grad school. But I now see that, it's a utopian idea. It's kind of a pipe dream. It doesn't correspond with human nature or with the way that group natural selection works. And in terms of the evolution of a species, it might be really nice to believe, for example, in NAP, the non-aggression principle. But the reality is, when other groups collectivize and you do not, your high-minded moral ideas make you extinct. If you are an individualist and they collectivize and march against you, then quantity can and often does overwhelm quality. You're a very intelligent and brave guy, but if 10 stupid guys come up against you, you could lose if they work together, right? So that's a moral failure of the idealism of strict anarchism or libertarianism, because other people don't conform to your morality.
Right away, I got to challenge you on the conflation. I mean, your point about, yes, smart people should not allow themselves to be victimized by mobs of stupid people. Absolutely. But you cross a whole other line when you associate or determine the associations based on that basic rationale on race as opposed to direct intelligence. And I will go, I'll even, make it clear that I agree with you on the point that race is used by those who would agree are working to oppress everyone as a means to keep us divided, conquered, manipulated, and that there is a perversion or an exploitation of the inherent human desire to get along and all of that. By the way, I got to acknowledge a quick comment from our audience here. Is your shirt a Boogaloo reference?
Yeah, it is.
All right. Well, so Boogaloo. I mean, here I got to point out. I mean, just to go straight to the racism, and I'll give you the chance to really respond and get into this. But one of the things I loved most about Boogaloo was that, aside from the memes are fucking awesome, keep them coming, boys. But the going out and protecting Black Lives Matter protests. That it was suburban white dudes. It was guys like if I was 15, 20 years younger, would have been me out there with an AR and body armor, and saying, what, like, it doesn't matter if I agree with this or not. I'm here to defend the right to protest and defend property and defend peace. And there's a wonderful crossing of lines and all of that. But anyway, to you, please respond to all of that however you think is best.
Yeah, there's a diversion of viewpoints in libertarianism as there is in what we used to call classical liberalism, where people said, I might disagree with your viewpoint, but I will defend to the death your right to express it. And the left does not practice that anymore. When we talk about totalitarianism and the federal government encroaching on people's rights, the federal government has declared that their biggest single enemy is people like me, white nationalists, who they call domestic terrorists, when in reality, my racial views are exactly the same as the racial views of the founding fathers of the United States. Now, I recognize that some libertarians don't like the Constitution of the founding fathers, but for those who do, you have to recognize that that's just a statistical reality. That's historical truth.
Either way, that's an intellectual appeal to authority. You can't get away with that shit on this show.
Okay. Let's go against authority.
Believe it, so it must be good.
All right, so let's appeal against authority then, right? The authority in control now wants to existentially destroy my people collectively. And they are doing that through their power and their control. The forced integration of Little Rock Central High School was not done voluntarily. It was done through bayonet point by the 101st Airborne, by the federal government. And it's only gotten worse since then. And now, for example, whites are denied the right to white associations. There's no congressional white caucus, right? If I start a white group, I'm considered a domestic terrorist, while there are all kinds of Black nationalist groups and Hispanic groups and Asian groups and Jewish groups that are perfectly fine and they're celebrated. They're considered to be patriotic and let's express their diversity. But as a white person, if I try to collectivize for my people's interest, and you have to understand that the people who founded this nation are going to be a minority in it within the next decade. Demographically, that's a statistical fact. Now, when we look at, like, for example, NAP, the Non-Aggression Pact, within the last year, we've learned from Black Lives Matter, for example, since you brought them up, that white silence is violence. So they have redefined what aggression is. You know, you and I could agree rationally.
You're making an argument against the movement based on one extreme statement that doesn't reflect the whole.
That has no unified leadership, so we have to judge them by their fruit, by their actions. And when their actions are looting and pillaging and killing people, and you have groups like the NFAC, right? They are redefining aggression and violence as being, if I don't agree to pay them reparations for supposed collective guilt, then that is an act of violence against them by their definition, and they then are redefining aggression. So, you know, you and I can say morally that, hey, if I hit you first, I'm the bad guy. So don't rape, don't steal, don't murder, and we can have, you know, a moral agreement to have mutual non-aggression, and that would work if people would agree to that. But that's not the way that human nature really is. Nature's red in tooth and claw, and group natural selection works through competition, and it's not pretty. Ask the Neanderthals, right? They got extinct because there was no nap going on, right?
All right. Well, speaking of that, then how do you measure whiteness? What is sufficiently white to be white? Am I white?
No, you're not. You don't consider yourself to be white. You had a black nationalist guest one time, and she said that she didn't like white people. And you said, well, I'm Jewish. And she said, well, that's even worse, right? So, no, you don't define yourself as being white. Right? So we both agree that you're not white. Okay?
Well, no, I mean, so you're saying it's by my sense of self, because I identify by my exact actual historical heritage, that half my family is of a Germanic origin and half is of a Jewish origin. That because I call myself that, I'm not white.
Well, the state of Israel, who we both oppose, right, for perhaps different reasons, would say that, you know, if your mother was Jewish, they judge it by matrilineal descent, so you're eligible for Jewish citizenship in Israel based on that. So let's look at what Israel's doing. For example, the U.S. government has said that the people who founded this nation, the United States, whether you like it or not, are now its greatest enemy. White nationalists, we're domestic terrorists, we're the greatest enemy of the United States. It'd be like if Israel, the state, said that the greatest enemy of Israel were Jewish people. Everyone would say, well, who the heck is taking control of the government of Israel, right? We're asking who the heck is taking control of the United States government, and we know. It's that 2%.
What's your define white? How do you decide whether someone is white or not?
A person of European ancestry. And we don't consider Ashkenazi Jews, even though they are from Europe per se, to be of European ancestry any more than we do, you know, Palestinian or Syrian that happens to be born in Liverpool.
Okay, that's an interesting means of exclusion there. But then how much? I mean, I'm 50-50. 50% Germanic, 50% Ashkenazi European.
Right. And, you know, you always get into things like the Nuremberg laws versus the one drop rule and the validity or lack thereof of current DNA tests. But basically, you know, you and I and most people that have some knowledge of phenotypes can look at someone and make a rational judgment of whether or not they are of European ancestry or not. And, you know, there are gray areas. Every race, every species.
So it's an appearance judgment.
Yeah, there are DNA tests as well, but we're not going to be cheek swapping everybody. You know, basically, if you look white and you act white and you are willing to take part in the what we call the 14 words to secure the existence of our people and a future for white children, then, you know, basically we're not going to be cheek swapping everyone. But what the Schulwald Network is doing is not trying to define people.
Sounds like you just want people to look white and act white.
Well, that would be a great start, wouldn't it? Right? I mean, because that's basically what is in my people's collective interest. And if you think of group natural selection, the way that species evolve, that is how they function. It's not individual rights or freedom that matters to a species in terms of survivability. It's group natural selection. And that's why they act together as a tribe, as a collective, as a pack, and they don't do the lone wolf thing because they know they don't last very long if they do. They actually make sacrifices for themselves.
So one of the things about this that, like, I mean, I can associate this with all of the offensive, racist things that have happened because of similar bad ideas in the past, and I think that's kind of intellectually dishonest. I don't want to try to saddle today's white nationalists or you know, race divisionists or balkanizers as like, well, you're about to make the next, you know, extermination of the Jews happened because a lot of you, I mean, don't want to kill me, just don't want to live under the same system as me, right?
Exactly.
And I would say, hey, everybody, if this is what racism looks like today, as opposed to actual fucking Nazis, we've come a long way, right? But there's still something really fundamentally intellectually revolting to me,
and it should be to you.
Hold on, about the preoccupation with the division based on race. And I'm a race. I mean, I think in many ways I would, and some people will say that this makes me racist, but no, I'm a race realist. Like, I'm a fan of the Carlos Mencia, Dave Chappelle style of humor that says, we can make fun of racial differences and acknowledge reality. And, actually, I'm a bigger fan of Jeff Foxworthy making fun of white people. I guess that does that make me a white nationalist? No. I think my last Pandora station was my Jeff Foxworthy, comedy. You might be a redneck stuff, but this why and honestly, like it doesn't come from people who are sort of self-actualized in their own identities and confident in their own identities, and Mr. Roper, I wouldn't necessarily try to get too personal on you here, but it doesn't seem like it's intellectually honest or driven by academic reason or research to make race such a significant primary relevant divider of society, or to be relevant at all when it comes to politics, except to say, stop using it against us in the way that we would agree in things that are forced diversity policy. So why race? Why is race the divider for you here?
Oh, we could do an entire series of shows about the real genetic differences between the race. Race is not a social construct. Society is a racial construct. Culture and society are downstream from race. And that's why we call it multiculturalism. It's a euphemism for multiracialism because culture is a product of race. But there are very real genetic differences that are defined by race. Just like you would say that, there's no difference. Spectrum? Yes, it is, for sure. And that's
so why the lines? Why force lines on a spectrum? And what if you're putting arbitrary dividing lines on a spectrum? How can you justify policy based on that?
Well, a rainbow is a spectrum, but we all recognize there are different colors that exist in nature, right? The difference between species is a spectrum. Lions and tigers can interbreed if they're allowed to in captivity. Donkeys and horses, there are lots of cases of different species that we define as being separate species that are spectrum genetically.
Yeah, but we don't send government officials to the paint department at Home Depot to separate the swatches by category.
Right, but if you try to mix them all together, you get a muddy gray color, which no one finds very pretty, right? If you try to forcibly mix them together. And in terms of authoritarianism, what they try to do is force us together. They don't allow us to have a white collective because it's not in their interest. What the totalitarian corporatocracy wants to do is to keep everyone, regardless of race, as their wage slaves beneath them.
Wait, so
while
hold
they're
on,
corporate billionaires.
Hold on, Billy. I got to point out one thing here, because you made an appeal to aesthetics there. Are you saying that multiracial babies aren't as beautiful as purebred babies?
Not in my view, they're not. No. And if you tell the AKC,
that's disgusting. You want to make that an aesthetic thing? Even aesthetically, I think you're wrong. I think that's disgusting. I think that
if you tell the AKC
Kennel Club of the beauty of humanity.
If you tell the AKC Kennel Club that there's no difference between a pit bull and a poodle except for the color of their fur, and that a mongrel mutt is just as pretty as a purebred Great Dane, they'd probably argue the fact with you because they prefer their own type. And I think that our descendants are more important than our pets.
Okay,
in terms
so
of their ancestry and their descendancy.
Let me bring this back to our point of agreement here then.
Right.
If you want to create your own little aesthetically isolated ethno-state, I support your right to do that. And the way I've said it as a talking point is that, if you're a socialist, communist, nudist, and you want to live in the woods, great. I'll take my entertainment from a distance. I'll never live there. But if you want, I respect your right. If you want to have, your private little ethno state and have your experiment, and we see how wrong and limiting that is, then I'm not going to stop you from having that experiment as long as you're not hurting anybody or forcing it on anybody else. So is that all you're asking for when you ask for the balkanization of the United States, that
Exactly.
you'd be able to create your own ethno-state community? And then what would the implications for the rest of the country or the world be?
Exactly. So if you look at recent polls in the last 30 days, we see that a third of Americans say that they think the United States should be balkanized, should be broken up by region, by groups of like-minded states. So if 1/3 of Americans already support that, in 1770, 3% of the American population wanted to be independent from Great Britain. That's 10 times as much. We see also recent polls in the last month that say that almost 2/3 of Americans believe we're going to have a civil war potentially in the next 5 years. People talk about this is the most divided that the political spectrum has been in my lifetime. So people are talking about the rancor and the division politically is growing worse, and the gulf is widening. The chasm is deepening every day. And really what's happening is natural. It's organic. I'm not trying to revolt against a state government or the federal government. I'm recognizing in my book, The Balk, BALK, which talks about this organic natural process is happening. Whites are naturally, through a regional level of white flight, moving from multicultural, diverse areas. For example, they're moving from the deep South, which is becoming more and more African-American by percentage, to the upper South, which is becoming more and more white by percentage. And that's, a circle effect, a snowball effect, so that southeastern part of the U.S., the former Confederate states, are becoming more black by percentage as whites leave it to become, new citizens in, for example, here in northern Arkansas or in eastern Tennessee. And out west, for example, whites are leaving California, which is becoming a de facto part of Mexico, and they're going to Idaho and Wyoming and buying property there, for example. So balkanization is already happening. African Americans from the Northeast and the Midwestern cities are moving back to the Deep South, increasing that percentage there. And there are a lot of Black nationalists who want the Southeastern states to be like a new Africa, a Black nationalist republic. And just like there are a lot of Hispanics who say Viva la Raza, who want, Arizona to be part of Aslan, to be part of de facto part of Mexico. So every race organically is trying to voluntarily vote with their feet and reconnect with their own people and form ethno-states separated from one another. And right now they're doing it peacefully. When they're not allowed to do it peacefully, then you get a situation like Yugoslavia in the 1990s.
Hold on,
when you have a civil war.
Quick challenge on that. Can you really say decisively that general demographic shifting trend, that those groupings aren't more based on values and culture rather than ethnicity?
Well, I'd say, once again, values and culture are downstream from race. They are products of race. Culture is really much a euphemism for race at this point. And I would say that pretty much,
what's your definition of culture? Because I would argue, and this might be a definitional thing, that there is such a thing as culture that is conscientious, that is created independent of circumstance, certainly influenced and made possible by it, not completely, divorced from it, but that a conscientious human being, and really with every generation, like culture is, culture is the momentum of human habit in groups, right? In one way of looking at it.
In groups, yeah.
And that at any point, an entire group of people who define a living culture can say, no, we're going to do it differently this time.
Well, Jung would disagree with you. He'd say there's a collective unconscious that drives that culture forward and makes it part of our collective unconscious. And that culture is therefore defined by our genetic inheritance, our race.
Okay, well then if you define it that narrowly, there's something that a lot of people would describe as culture that is bigger than that brings a lot of these groups together. Some of it's just geography. People want to live in a certain geography with a certain climate that dictates a certain lifestyle and then suggests a certain attitude. And I would argue with you, certainly, while you can look at all of those trends and see racial motivations, I think you're reading into that a lot more. Oh, so we have dictionary. The arts and other manifestations of human intellectual achievement regarded collectively. The customs, art, social institutions, and achievement of a particular nation, people, or other social group. Obviously, very, very big nebulous definitions that, in an academic sense, people can use differently. But you seem primarily motivated by racial identification when looking at those larger demographic trends, which seems to demean other people to say that they are as crass and simplistic as you, when they are probably motivated by things far more important and meaningful than the color of the people in their community.
I don't think that conspicuous consumption in order to avoid authenticity is really meaningful or deep. I think it's a part of the reflection of the plastic culture of consumerism that they've bought into. So I hold that my values are more eternal and certainly more profound than theirs.
So I'm not saying consumerism is the culture that opposes the culture of racism, but
it is. It is. It certainly is.
It is one. It is one competing cultural center, perhaps. But no, intellect, peace, harmony. California, Hawaii beach vibes. Like where that shirt came from, right there. The aloha attitude, like that's a cultural thing that creates there are a lot of white people in Hawaii who are there to be like, yeah, man, Hawaiian culture, I want to live this way. And to them, that's more important than race. People move, I think, I don't know numbers off the top of my head, forgive me, but I think when people move from one area to another, economics, security, job opportunities, schools, color of people in my community is pretty low on the priority list for most people these days. Well, not deliberately completely left off.
Yeah. I don't know if you live in Compton or East LA, but I could tell you that it probably matters to you more than you think it does. But, you're right that a lot of white people probably might not want to live in a white ethno state, just like a lot of Jews like yourself don't want to live in Israel, which you have your own ethno state there you could live in if you wanted to, right? There might be white people.
By the way, I got to concede one important point here that you like, which is that I will give you that a lot of those people who conscientiously go economics, security, schools, etc., subconsciously, race is a bigger factor than most of them would admit. But while you would see that as something that needs to be acknowledged and celebrated and brought out into the light, I would say, no, it's being suppressed for a good reason. It's intellectually dishonest or suboptimal. And I might say, a few hundred years ago when we didn't know better and you didn't have a better proxy for someone who shared your values other than race, it's a nice shortcut. But in today's world, it's intellectually lazy and something that should be a much lower priority in how we choose to live.
Well, intellectually, I could argue the primacy of race and its importance. That'd be a completely different show. But I will tell you that regardless of what euphemistic reasons people give for moving to be with their own kind, the reality is its effect. And its effect is that people are voting with their feet and voluntarily separating out by race. They are collectivizing and they are making the Southeast more black, the Southwest more Hispanic, and the Upper South and the Midwest more white by percentage. That's the effect. Whatever reasons they might have or not have or euphemistically claim to have or deny having for moving, they are moving. And the effect of that is that different sections of the country are becoming de facto ethno-states. That's what's actually happening. And I talk about that in my book, The Balk. And now you talk about totalitarianism. I've published 16 books, fiction and nonfiction. Most of them have been most of them have been purged, have been censored by most of the big tech companies, like Amazon, for example. And now they're available at VinlandFreedomPress.net. I have them back in print now, but people can read that book, The Balk, for themselves. Does not have racial slurs in it. It does not demean anyone. I don't call anyone bad names. I talk about the statistical facts. It's a nonfiction book about what is ongoing. And regardless of whether people think it's a great idea or whether it's a horrible idea, whether they hate the fact that it's happening or not, it's happening. So the balkanization of America has already happened. It's ongoing. People are separating out. Now, what is going to happen is we're going to face a breaking point where the economy is going to collapse or there's going to be intervention of foreign war that's not going to go well for a Zog. I'm sorry, that's our term for the Zionist-occupied government, right? And when that happens, the collapse of America is going to lead to the acceleration of the balkanization process. Now, we are accelerationist. We believe that multiracial democracy has failed, and that being the case, balkanization is better than an eternal Yugoslavian style civil war like they had with ethnic cleansing. So if the government had the integrity to allow peaceful separation, which they don't, we know that, then that would be preferable to an ethnic cleansing civil war type situation. But they're not going to allow it to happen peacefully, I'm afraid. So it's going to be pretty bloody.
I am much more optimistic. I think it can be. And you know that this is where I would make the appeal to your followers. If they're ready to drop racism as a priority in political organizing, that the peaceful way to achieve balkanization can be through localization and decentralization of government. And once that's achieved in a way that respects everyone's everyone's human rights across the world to organize in whatever communities they see fit, then you can organize your community. Although today, we're doing this here in Gardenia with this 10-acre micronation, and I would also encourage anybody in your audience to pursue those kinds of bottom-up solutions. Hey, test your pathetic, bad fucking ideas. If that's what you want to do, I'll support your right to do it. And you know what? Compared to the current system, you'd be hard pressed to do much worse. But Billy, just to wrap this up, I got to point out something from someone in our producers club, and then we'll do a quick lightning round if there are any other comments or questions from the audience, and give you the last word here. But I don't know if they want their name public, but the person who set this up said, tell Billy that the person who got this set up for him is 2.9% Ashkenazi Jew. So I don't know if you have any comment for them. But let's see, Jim, do you have any other comments or questions for Billy you want to put up on screen? All right. You've been T-rolled. I don't get all the hostilities. Fighting amongst ourselves, all Americans, isn't going to solve the issues we have. So, Billy, I'll give you a chance to respond to that, maybe with a note of unity, even with this, with your sort of racist views. I mean, would you want people of different races to band together to fight the current tyranny to achieve a world of your vision of decentralized ethno-states?
Well, like I said, I certainly commend and respect your work for freedom and for liberty. You've been there on the front lines. You faced arrest. You faced oppression. And I support many of the things that you've done. So, you and I are both opposed to the same tyranny. And I also have common ground with a lot of Black nationalists and with Latino nationalists. I agree with them that, we live in systemic racism, and they need to, if I was a Black nationalist, I would want to have control of my own destiny as a people. I'd want to have my own culture celebrated and protected and preserved. I wouldn't want to be a second-class citizen in someone else's country either. So if I were an African-American, I would be a Black nationalist, and I respect their willingness to want to separate and find their own way. And so, I do have common ground with other nationalists of other ethnicities who oppose tyranny. And the only question is, well, what do you replace it with? And where do we actually draw the physical borders? And that's something that might be negotiable.
Well, Billy, I would just be afraid that with all these blacks and whites and Hispanics working together against the current tyranny, some of them might, interbreed a little bit, and we'd have some of your ugly, grayed out mixed breed babies. Or we might just end up pursuing the Bulworth strategy of let's all just fuck each other till we come out the same color.
Well, if we did, then we whites would be improving their IQs, so we'd be helping them out so they could have the models.
All right, quick joke question before we get to one last serious one from the Producers Club. 420 Pat Rock says, do you burn crosses or light them, and why?
Okay, I don't personally, but we have in the past lit crosses. And because it's not burning a cross, that'd be a destructive act, but lighting a cross is illuminating the cross, which is a symbol of Jesus Christ and Christianity. And I want to clarify what you said at the beginning, and I knew this was not your fault, not error or anything, but the Shieldwall Network, which people can read about for themselves at shieldwallnetwork.com, Shieldwall Network is not a religious organization. We are not exclusively Christian. The majority of our members are Christian of one denomination or another, but we have members who are agnostic and atheist and pagan or whatever. We leave that up to the conscience of the individual. We're not a religious organization per se.
Most people would find that a more important divider than race. But one last serious question, then I'll give you the last word here. Stephen McClure in our producers chat writes, would you and your ethno-state trade with a non-white ethno-state? Also, do you believe that one person could own another person?
Let me take the second one first. No, I would not want a person to own another person. We do not support slavery. We would not support the reimposition of slavery. We don't want African Americans or anyone else to be our slaves, to be clear about that. We don't want anyone to be our slaves. We don't want non-whites in our society as second-class citizens or under any status at all whatsoever, certainly not as slaves. But no, we would not impose slavery. But as far as trading with a non-white ethno-state, hypothetically, I personally, if I were in a position of making that decision, I would have no issue with trading with a non-white ethno-state if that were possible in a peaceful manner in a future world of some kind.
All right. Well, I appreciate you hanging with all the questions and standing up to appropriate scrutiny here, Mr. Roper. And anywhere you want to send people to connect with you other than shieldwallnetwork.com.
Thank you, Adam. I appreciate the opportunity. And like I said, I really do respect and commend your work. I'm not, being facetious or at all just blowing smoke when I say that. So, we have a lot of things we agree on and, of course, things we don't, but that's fine. We're two free people having a discussion. It was very civil, and I appreciate your cordiality. I will say that, as far as tyranny, if people want to know what the government hates, the government's told you what it hates. If you don't like the government, they've already declared that people like me, white nationalists, are the biggest threat against the government. So take them at their word. We're the ones they consider to be their greatest enemy. And libertarians, if you believe in personal liberty, look at what the government is trying to enforce. They're trying to enforce multiracialism. They're trying to force everyone to be their wage slaves under their hegemony. And if you want to read books that they tell you should not read, if you want to read books that big tech and the corporatocracy tries to censor, then you can read some of my censored books about the balkanization of America at VinlandFreedomPress.net.
All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Roper.
Thank you, Adam. Have a great day.
Well, that ended up being as enlightening of a conversation as I hoped it could be. And I hope everybody who was here visiting in our audience for the first time enjoyed it as much as I did. All right. So now, without further ado, oh, John Smith, we got another comment there. Well, let's check in with all right, so John Smith, Billy just destroyed his narrative by saying if he were black, I would be a black nationalist. He thinks he is superior, not the color of his skin. Well, there are too many fallacies to pick apart per se in all of that. But Jim, I don't know. I don't know how you thought I handled that, or if you enjoyed it as much as I did. I also want to check in with you for general other sentiment from the audience, and if there was a top comment you wanted to award from all of that.
That was a lot. It was all moving so fast. I couldn't tell you which one was the top.
I was actually pleasantly surprised how quickly we were able to really get straight to the heart of things at the beginning of that. No bullshitting, not much background, just okay, yep, mm-hmm. First 3 minutes, we set the stage pretty well.
So was he? Because you know how it is with me reading comments and stuff. Sometimes some of the stuff he was saying I missed a few seconds of it. So was he literally talking about forcing this ethno state? Was there violence involved? Because a couple people were saying with you're a different race, so he respects you, but he just doesn't want you to exist, or what the hell's what I mean? How does that work? How can you?
No, it's this. So I actually think that he represents a positive evolution of racism. I hate to say it that way, right? Or sort of de-escalation of racism. There will, for many years to come at least, there will be insecure people who turn to race for some soothing of that insecurity. And it could be, and I think all racism, other than miseducation, could be seen through that. All sort of intellectually based racism. I mean, you can't look at Billy Roper and call him an idiot. You can't say that he's not well read. You can't say that he's not thought out. So, like, you really have to identify what's wrong with his line of thinking that differentiates him from ours, that takes him in this other direction. And it might be, not a personal insecurity that leads to racism in his case, or those of his followers. And when I say this, I don't mean to say that anybody who's a racist is fundamentally insecure more or less than the average human being. Every human being carries around, insecurities about something, right? Like like I'm insecure about how big my nose is because I'm, all right, we'll stop there. But there's something that they try to compensate for or want to figure out with racism or ethnostatism. And he's so if that kind of sentiment used to be manifest as therefore we must enslave the inferior races or destroy the nations of people of different colors than us, and now it's, well, we just need to be separate and let them have their own thing and we'll have our own thing, and let us have our own thing, right?
CJ's been taking liberties with the comments as well. I didn't even put that one up. CJ did.
Now that's different. If he's misrepresenting himself, I'm giving him sort of the benefit of the doubt of, assuming that he presented himself.
Right. I was thinking of in the beginning, there was talk of like how there's some sort of bigger plan to eliminate the white race altogether. And therefore, they have the right in self-defense to be aggressive or be violent. Right. So that was where other than that, I didn't hear him literally saying, we need to hurt anybody or kill anybody, or, we need to. But obviously, we also disagree personally with the way they look so down upon race mixing or whatever.
Now, hypothetically,
seems retarded to me, but as like Euban T-Rold said, I'm not mad at these folks as long as no actual violence is used against people. I have no issues. Words and ideas are not weapons.
Right.
Something to that effect, right?
Right. Like I said, this is kind of an evolution of racism where it used to be used as a justification for all this other greater evil. Today, this is the worst that it can be. And I think it's still on its way out and being stamped out and made less and less relevant as insecurities become less and less relevant and less attached to race. And there's more racial awareness in everybody in the world growing up. We all grow up as children with a radically different experience of race than even our parents, and certainly our grandparents or our great-grandparents. How much racial diversity does the average human being experience through multimedia and television primarily, but compared to their grandparents' generation? It's a different fucking world. Like, just we take it for granted. Like, step back for just a minute. It's one of those things, again, hey, I like taking the longer view of human history. You got to do it on, this issue of race as well, and the technology that connects us, that makes that kind of racial isolation less relevant. But I just want to suggest it's possible to be a segregationist without being a racist. Now, let me just try this idea on for a second. I'm not saying it's correct. I'm just saying that it's a possible set of ideas that is at least somewhat, it's more coherent than the average statist, at least. All right. But that because of racial differences, no race is better or worse than another. That's subjective. But for the sake of harmony of society, people should segregate based on race into ethnostates. And I know that race is a fluid concept, that's a spectrum, but there are some obvious clustering, and we can do our best practical job to kind of keep people clustered by color. But it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be better for humanity if we, and see, this is not my opinion, but just to be clear, this is not what I believe. I believe that this is a bad way of judging people, that race is not irrelevant, but compared to intelligence, integrity, ability, whatever, gender, judge someone by their gender more than their race, in terms of what's relevant. But it's it could be not racist, where if racism is defined as believing that one race is superior or inferior to another, and saying like, no, we should just try to cluster by race because it's natural and everybody's going to be happier that way, right? I mean, I totally disagree. Again, I got to, but that's kind of the evolution of racism. That is,
yeah. Brendan said, Adam, I am disappointed in this being the first time I am chiming in. Your attacks verbally upon the limitations of diversity. We all have the right to, by nature, to be with our own.
Okay, no, so that's fair enough. Like, and I will even bridge the gap here, but I will say, like, let's keep it completely out of larger social organization and government. Like, it should have absolutely nothing to do with government unless it's at like the micronation level. But if it's you want to be with your own and you define that by like it's sort of like it's not wrong. It's just kind of pathetic. Like, I want to gather with like-minded people here in Gardenia, not like colored people.
Right,
like
right.
This is dumb.
It feels like we're going backwards. I don't know. It just I mean, I can even just off the top of my head, you're limiting the pool of people that you have that you can get new technology from, to build stuff from, resources, all that stuff. Oh, we'll do trade. I mean,
Right.
just
Well,
what's the point?
and so
I don't understand.
this is where at the micro level, it might be more relevant in individual decisions and who you're attracted to sexually. Like if I was only attracted to black women, I'd be a black supremacist, right? And I only want black women around me, but that's like at the family level. Every family is a socialist communist collective anyway, so these things all get blurry at that level. So yeah, you have a right to that personal preference. It's
one
just
last question.
It's lame. It's fucking lame.
Yeah,
and we're gonna
totally
do
agree.
our COVID block. All right.
Yeah, one last question just for clarification, because again, I was sidetracked a lot. Did he mention like that he believed whites were superior to others, or just different? And what was it all about? Just separating the groups? Was he saying that in his opinion whites are superior? Because there was a lot of debate about that back and forth in the comments too. People hate him for that, saying, why are you and I was like, I don't specifically, I guess, remember him saying that, but did he?
Yeah, well, because he uses the term, he describes himself as a white nationalist, not the ideology I'm suggesting of sort of racially objective ethnostatist, right? So yeah, there is an element of white superiority in that, but there's also and he might try to deny it or work around the semantics of it, but there is an element of white superiority in identifying as a white nationalist, even though he says I would be a black nationalist. So and someone pointed out, like, he's just about his own. All right, that's enough of hacking this apart. Yep. I think that was a fun interview. I hope everybody learned as much as I did and enjoyed it like that. It's a fun, sensitive subject. But we do have to talk about COVID at some point today. It's like, eat your Brussels sprouts. By the way, in case anybody knows or wants to know, like, I love Brussels sprouts. I think they're I think that's my favorite vegetable. But without further ado, today's COVID block. All right, we got not a lot of time. We're going to make it quick, like an anal swab, just in and out, just a second. You're barely going to feel it. Daily Mail kicks us off with this headline: American diplomats in China complain they were forced to take anal swab tests for coronavirus. Yep. Washington said procedure was undignified and told staff to refuse to take it. Beijing has since claimed the test was given in error as diplomats are exempt. China's foreign ministry spokesman denied the claim made by U.S. officials. And I don't think they're actually forcing people, but it's sort of like, oh, whoops, the machine just failed and now there's something in your butt. Yeah. All right. But to the vaccine, right? More importantly, COVID-19 vaccine refusers may face different life insurance policies, according to cityam.com. Not surprising, But now one more way they are trying to leverage this into you is to say that you don't have the COVID shot, your life insurance policy will be affected. Eventually, your health insurance, if you still pay for your own health insurance. But yeah, then who knows where this is going to play out eventually, but it's not good to see this leverage being used. And this is the new one. I bring this story to you not just because someone put it in the producers club, but we all need to be wary of these things being used against us. And again, my position, and of course, this isn't my position. This is all parody. No, my position on the vaccine is not like, oh my God, it's going to kill you. Don't get it. You're submitting to tyranny. But hey, it's only been out for a few months. Why not wait? Make sure you can get a safer one. But if you have a particular reason to get it for yourself, for your job, for some other reason, and you do the research on which the exact one that you're getting, and you know the side effects, and it's not that big a deal. But the way that they're forcing it on people and protecting the companies putting them out there from liability, that's a big deal. Now, to Spain, getting worse. Now, this is one of those headlines where I wouldn't cover it if it wasn't for the intent being news itself. So the headline from the local.es, Spain's Galicia to make COVID vaccine compulsory and fine those who refuse it up to 60,000 euros. Now, there are a couple words in here that suggest why I wouldn't cover this. To make, as in they're going to do this. Governments, politicians put out a lot of crap like that to float it, to test it. But in this case, they want this headline out because they want to add to the fear and the pressure to motivate people to get the vaccine. So could make it compulsory and fine, and then up to 60,000 euros. There's got to be some quirk in the thing that does, because it says the first sentence here says that fines for those who don't follow the rules will go from 1,000 to 60,000 euros. Our next story from Wenatchee World, back to the United States here. This is a great photo. Let's get this up here. Back at school, pandemic continues, but life goes on at Wenatchee and Eastmont Highs. Yeah, look at these green bubbles. Your kid. This is government school. I got to read the cat. Get this, just the green bubbles. I don't know what you call it, pods. As students have returned to high school, they've had to adapt to changes to continue their activities. High school sophomore Allison Chamberlain and the rest of the band practiced in small COVID-19 enclosures around the school's auditorium on Tuesday. Half of the band practices at a time. God damn, you got to feel sorry for these kids. Holy shit. They're numbered. Look at this. And then you got to step into somebody else's pod. You don't get your own pod, I don't think, right? You carry around your own pod and set it up so you can play your saxophone and the noise can get out without the spittle getting out. Like, this is the game we're playing with high school students right now. Look in this picture though. If you look closely, the pod. Tell me someone in the comments, please tell me that the students have like a better name for like the big green weenie. We would call these in the Marines the big stubby green weenies. But like, what are these? The green bubbles, the pods? But if you look close, they have numbers on them: 27, 29, 12, 39, 43. Not names. This is. I mean, it's probably marginal, but you're creating extra surfaces that kids are breathing onto and touching and sharing with each other. And they're 6 feet apart. All right, Jim Freedom writes, they look at those things for camping. It's a mobile porta potty, essentially. Yeah, the little mobile. Yeah, so I've seen those, or pop-up showers, right? But yeah, like for this, you put a little bucket in, you could poop in it. Pop-up outhouse. This is insane. Anyway, this is welcome to what your kids are experiencing, our American high school students. Now to Russia. 2/3 of Russians believe COVID-19 is a bioweapon. Survey shows. Yeah, the Levada Center, an independent polling agency, published their latest survey into Russian attitudes and beliefs around COVID-19 on Monday. It found that the majority of respondents thought that the coronavirus was man-made, despite scientists saying it likely began in animals before spreading to humans. Well, there are also scientists who have said it was man-made, and there are scientists. Oh my God, this appeal to science is appeal to scientism. Vaccine hesitancy was found to be on the rise, particularly among younger Russians who are distrustful of the domestically manufactured Sputnik V jab. Sputnik V has been found to give around 92% protection against COVID-19. Of course, they got to throw in that little ad for their product. Yeah, nice to see that skepticism in Russia is so high. TheHill.com, U.S. reports record number of variant coronavirus cases. We are still number one. To the Wall Street Journal, banks in Germany tell customers to take deposits elsewhere. Why is this in the COVID block? More customers are having to pay negative rates as savings have surged amid the pandemic. Yeah, interest rates have been negative in Europe for years, but it took the flood of savings unleashed in the pandemic for banks finally to charge depositors in earnest. Germany's biggest lenders, Deutsche Bank and Commerzbank, have told new customers since last year to pay a 5.5% annual rate to keep large sums of money with them. The banks say they can no longer absorb the negative interest rates the European Central Bank charges them. The more customer deposits banks have, the more they have to part with the central bank. Now, here's the understanding I have of like how this is a switch in the tipping point. Because normally, if I'm a bank, yes, I'm providing you a service of holding your money in a safe way for you, but you're providing me a service of getting to use your money for investments or as a backing for investments. And I'm going to want to compete with other banks by investing your money as well as possible and therefore providing a return on that investment. And the value that I get out of holding onto your money would outweigh the cost of the depreciation and the value of holding it safely. But now the cost of holding the money has gone up relative to the advantage that the banks get from holding it because central banks are printing so much money right now. And we're going to come to that with the next story in the United States as one sign of it. But it also, it's not just that, it's the sudden shifts in productivity and flows of money around the world due to COVID. Now, before we get to the money flowing in the US, the Washington Post via MSN.com has this headline: "The wave of COVID bankruptcies has begun." And this story's from 3 days ago. I think they were a little late to the party, but let's see how they call this the wave. A new Albany, Ohio music school offering piano, guitar, and violin lessons racked up under nearly $1 million in loans and $35,000 in credit card debt. A fine dining restaurant in Providence, Rhode Island received more than $450,000 in federal small business funds to help pay workers, but still had to close its doors. Now, maybe it's that just the majority of businesses that we see open on the streets in the United States are receiving PPP funds. And that's, I mean, they kind of make sense, right? But really, has that been keeping so many businesses going for so long that now this is what they're calling the wave of bankruptcies? It's when the government money runs out and the government can say, see, we broke your leg, and and then gave you a crutch and said, see, if it wasn't for the government, you wouldn't be able to walk. And in this case, it's if you didn't have the PPP, if you didn't have the COVID relief, how would you survive the pandemic? Yeah. So nearly a year since coronavirus-related shutdowns began affecting large swaths of the American economy, more businesses are filing for bankruptcy as Chapter 11 filings were up nearly 20% in 2020 compared to the previous year, court records show. Data on a subset of businesses, those registered as corporations, show that some sectors are faring much worse than others, with restaurants, retailers, entertainment companies, real estate firms, and oil and gas ventures filing for protection far greater numbers than previous years, according to New Generation Research. Now, I keep going back and quoting Trump on this one thing because he said, oh, don't worry about restaurants closing. They'll go away, but they'll come back just under new ownership. He actually said that, and not maybe with that exactly nefarious tone, but almost those exact words at a White House press conference on coronavirus, like earlier last year. I think it was like in April or May. And I've quoted him on that like pretty much every week since, because you go, oh, that's the point. We're stealing your bit. This is a long, slow, vicious theft where we are going to steal your businesses out from underneath you and consolidate money and power even more in the hands of the few. So goes on though. Entertainment companies bankruptcies quadrupled, tripled for oil and gas, doubled for computer and software, 50% or more for restaurant owners, real estate companies, and retailers, compared to 2019 data from the research firm show. Now the question is, these companies that went bankrupt, how does companies that went bankrupt versus didn't correlate with received PPP funds and didn't? Or really are these companies going bankrupt because they never got them? Now they're at the end of their savings, or they're at the end of their PPP loans, and there's not a chance to get more. Whatever it is, who has money in America today? What businesses get to stay open? The ones the government wants to. And what's scary about this, for me, looking at this like an economist, is the misallocation of resources. Instead of allowing the economy to adjust, government kept businesses staffed that weren't providing goods or services that people could consume. That is a huge misallocation of resources. Huge. So, where do we go from this? What's the point? The Washington Post, again, via MSN.com. Once Trump's enemy, Fed emerges as White House ally in rejecting concerns about overdoing stimulus. Yes, doesn't sound like a COVID story, does it? Where their whole excuse for the stimulating, the reason we need to be stimulated is because of COVID. As prominent economists, Republican lawmakers, and some market analysts raise alarm bells about the risk of overspending and overstimulating the economy, the Biden administration has found a surprising ally, the Federal Reserve. Oh, really? They want to print more money? They want to rip us off more? Well, now you see the point of all of this. And that's our show for the day, because we got to go get on this live. Or should we just let's just dip into this since we're late on it now. Let me see what I can pull up, unless CJ wants to see if he can get better audio.
Yeah,
well, let's see at this hearing.
You can
What's that?
Send me the link to whatever you need, and I'll get it on the screen.
It was in the Producers Club this morning.
Okay, I might have missed it then.
Let's see. I'll copy the link.
There's a lot that ended up in the.
Play us out of the COVID block.
The detention, the prolonging the stop, is that the only ground that we're dealing with of what would constitute unreasonableness?
That's my understanding, Your Honor.
So we're not dealing with whether or not asking for ID is itself.
Oh, we're 4 minutes late. This is already going.
Whether or not the officer has the right, or whether you have to give your ID, that's already been decided by, and that's not squarely raised by this appeal. Correct?
I believe so, Your Honor. I think, and I don't want to put words in Mr. Kokesh's counsel's mouth, but my understanding is that it was asking for the ID after there was no longer a valid reason for the stop during the extension of the stop.
So it's whether or not that was extending the stop.
Yes, sir.
Not vis-a-vis whether you can lawfully asked for ID or not. It's whether or not that unreasonably extended the stop.
That is, yes, Your Honor, and that's the,
And that's not, and there was nothing related to the video taping that's an extension of the stop, right? That I'm trying to narrow what are the issues.
All right, guys, this is going to go on for a while. I'm going to get my internet focused on just doing this right now. It's going to get boring. I'll give you a full update tomorrow. But yeah, this is actually really fascinating for me. If you want to do this, join the public group right now, Adam versus the Man, t.me/Adam versus the Man. I just posted the link to what we're listening to. This is the live audio stream of my case from January last year about the Shall ID. Our hero in this conversation you'll be listening for is Kearney Laughlin, my attorney. Jim, I guess we'll pick tomorrow a winner for our contest, and we'll catch up on promos again then. But without further ado, peace and love, y'all. Choose happiness.
That everything was
be excellent
okay.
to each other.
Do you